It's a good half, Pua.
Aloha mai kākou, and welcome to the Aha Wahine Kūhinapapa webinar series. As we wait for those to come into the Zoom room and for those to log into Facebook on our live feed, I would like to ask everyone, Nohea mai oi, where are you from? We would love to aloha you and your aina. And if you could share your aina in the Zoom chat or on Facebook live comment section, we would love to see where you're from. We are celebrating Mahina Olelo Hawaii, and so we're hoping that we can include some olelo here in our webinar. I will go first. Aloha mai kākou o nā pua Cassin Fisher ko ui noa no kamana nui waialua mai au ma ka mokupuni o Oahu. Aloha, my name is Napua and I'm from Kamana Nui Waialua on Oahu. And let me just check our chat. We have Aloha Malia from Hanapepe, Kauai. Aloha Kanani from Hilo, Hawaii. Ka ohana Ka'aihue Andy Soto from Kea'au, Oahu. Aloha kākou. We'll just give it a minute or so. It's Kaniko Hola. It's 7 o'clock and our webinar is about to start. A few housekeeping. If you have any if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the chat, share them on Facebook in the comment section. We have some wonderful tech support that will share those questions with us on the live Zoom video. And we have more people sharing where you're from. Aloha, Jenny Kelly from Halawa, Hawaii, Oahu, and Rhonda from Pukalani, Maui. Aloha kākou. Mahalo nui for joining us. We have a great webinar set up tonight. Very happy to have these wonderful wahine here. Aloha Melissa from Waipahu. Okay. Aloha Bailey from Lualualei. So let's get started on our webinar. I will kick it off to Kim to introduce herself and to talk a little bit about the Aha Wahine and the series that we've been offering.
Mahalo for starting us off, Napua. Aloha mai kākou. My name is Kim Kule Burney. I am another member of the planning committee of Aha Wahine Ku Hinapapa. I'm calling in from Kailua, Oahu, and happy to be here. My kupuna hail from Kokoiki, Nahiku, Manoa, and Lihue. So what is Aha Wahine Ku Hinapapa? It's what we're doing in place of a large gathering that we had. The last really big one we had was in 2012, and we wanted to bring you another really large gathering last summer, and that didn't work out. So we thought, why not bring women together at different times? So this series, really, we're focusing on the intergenerational transfer of mana. And if you've been tuning in, then you know that we've been bringing together mothers and daughters and sisters, and sometimes even 3 generations. And tonight we bring you a mother and at least 2 daughters, and maybe we'll have another one surprise us. I'm not quite sure. But we'll be talking story tonight with Dr. Malia Ka'aihue and her daughters Kea Nuenue and Puamakamae. But first I did, you want to talk about some of this, Napua, or Shall I continue? If you're listening, you can tune in. We're also live streaming this on Facebook. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and we have a website, and Malia Nobriga Oliveira keeps us really well connected. And we want to thank our sponsors because this wouldn't be possible. Aha Wahine Ku Hinapapa is all volunteer. And if you attended any of the conferences, previously, it was all done by volunteers with the support of some very generous organizations. And we want to mahalo Hawaii Nui Akea, School of Hawaiian Knowledge, Hawaii People's Fund, who gave us money to, who really kind of was the catalyst for this series, Papa Ola Lokahi, the Native Hawaiian Health Board, Native Hawaiian Education Association, and OEV Television, who's helping us with our tech support tonight. So, without any further delay, turn it back over to Napua to introduce us to our panelists.
Mahalo. Let's see. I'm humbled to introduce these two kaikamahine from Makaha Oahu, and we will start with Kia Nuenue Pisoto, who is a 17-year-old fashion designer and model. She has honed her love for the environment and created a brand inspired by the Aina and Kai. She is currently a senior at Kamehameha Schools, and her first collection, Makaha Fierce, debuted in December 2015 when she launched her swimwear company, Anu Hawaii. Aloha, kia nuenue. And also we have Puamakamae Soto, a 15-year-old Kamehameha student and 6-time national champion in surfing. She made history being the first athlete to win both the women's shortboard and longboard titles in last summer's National Scholastic Surfing Association in 2020 in California and in 2021 in North Carolina. Aloha Puamakamae.
Aloha.
And now to their mama, I'd like to introduce Dr. Malia Ka'aihue, a highly recognized entrepreneur and award-winning author, deeply involved with Hawaiian culture and Hawaii's community. Malia has founded 8 very successful businesses. She attended the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where she got bachelor's degrees in Hawaiian studies and Hawaiian language, master's and doctoral degrees in political science. She's won many awards, most recently and most notably, top 25 women-owned businesses in 2019, Hawaii's fastest 50 businesses in 2020. And in 2019, she was also featured on the cover of Hawaii Business Magazine, magazine's 20 for the next 20. So let's see, it's 2021. We want to bring you back to talk story with you in 20 more years. And maybe our daughters, all of our daughters and granddaughters will be running Aha Wahine Ku Hinapapa then. There. Aloha, Malia. How are you?
Aloha, I'm great. Thank you for the beautiful introduction and for having us tonight.
We're really glad that you're here. And tonight's topic is about business. And, talking story, we realize that a lot of us know a little bit about education, a little bit about nonprofit. Not a lot of us are too involved in business. So this is going to be like a 101, if you don't mind. And if you can just give us maybe kind of what inspired you to get involved in business. How did you get started with, and then end up, starting 8 businesses? What was your inspiration?
Absolutely. And I have to say that my background is also in education. I was at the University of Hawaii for years, and then took a leap into private sector. So I always call myself the accidental entrepreneur, because I didn't go to business school and I'm not a typical business person. But I think that provides even more value for the lens and the way in which I think and understand the world and how I approach business. So I would say for me, being an entrepreneur is very much like being a kanaka. It's about taking the assets and resources that you have and figuring out how to best utilize them to bring abundance into whatever mission or organization or goal you're trying to achieve. So, many of my businesses have been born to either solve problems that I see in Hawaii, And because of that, it's always mission driven, just like in an educational organization or institution. But I found when I was at the university that I got very frustrated with the institution. And many people that work in institutions I know can understand where this is coming from. But I just felt like things were moving way too slow, and Kanaka weren't participating in conversations at business levels with business roundtables that were actually shaping policy in Hawaii. We were commenting and we were providing, great works of contemporary academic Hawaiian Ike. But when it came to the people who are making decisions, who were actually designing what Hawaii is going to look like for our grandchildren, there were very few Hawaiians at the table. And for me, that was really the motivator to get into private sector. I feel like I can actually do more community work in private sector because I can, design the way in which I want to run my businesses. And then as a Hawaiian business owner, I can give back money into the community and let community organizations that are doing great community work do their thing. So that's just a little bit of background on my accidental entrepreneur career.
That's your start. Right. Yeah. I love that. You shared that with us the other day, the accidental entrepreneur. And yet everything you just described is really mission driven, and it resonates, with those of us who are familiar with nonprofit and mission, the sense of purpose, the sense of mission. And I think you also have, you have really values-based business. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think of it, like in Ahupua'a, when I build my businesses, that, there has to be sustainability. Everybody, the Aina and the Kanaka that are involved in that particular business endeavor have to be well taken care of. So, for example, all of my businesses, all of the employees, their entire ohana is part of our business structure. And this is very much modeled off of Punana Leo and, many of the programs that we've had the privilege to, our ohana has had the privilege to be a part of. And also that, for me, there has to be a bottom line that really increases the capacity of community and culture. So for our firms, it's 40%. So before anybody, any of the partners see any profits, 40% of all of our profits goes back into community. And, that's something in a traditional American business model. They have things called B Corps that you can apply for and be a B Corp and be sustainable. But for me, it's just being Hawaiian. Like that's the Hawaiian thing to do, is to share my resources with the community and then to share it with my staff and their ohana, and then to take care of the business. So it's very much values-based, but at the end of the day, it's Aina Kanaka. And the closer that we bring Kanaka to our Aina, the better Hawaii is taken care of.
I just love that. And I'm sure you're passing that down to your daughters as well. Maybe we can learn a little bit about them.
Maybe we can start off with Kia Nuenue, if you wanted to share with us a little bit about your business and share your video.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hi, aloha everybody. My name is Kia Nuenue Soto, and I'm 17, and I run a bikini company, and I design all the suits. And I run the business. And then I'm going to share my short video that talks a little bit about my brand.
ʻAha Wahine Soto is a name you are not going to forget. She's taking the fashion world by storm, and she's only 16. The native Hawaiian student from Kamehameha Schools debuted her first hand-sewn keiki collection, Makaha Fierce, Back in December 2015, officially launching her swimwear company, Anu Hawaii. That was when she was just 12. I caught up with a young Wahine-made entrepreneur who's passionate about expressing her values of Aloha Aina in every design. Hi, Tita.
Hi.
We are in a very special place. This is where, actually, I'll let you tell everyone where we are right now.
Yeah, so this is actually where I had my first fashion show 4 years ago. Oh, that's crazy. I was 12. Yeah, and that's kind of just where it all started.
That's crazy that it's 4 years ago, you say. 12 years old, and you had a fashion show. It was your first line. Tell me about it.
I think in the beginning, everything was a little different. I was more into sewing, you know, that was what I've been doing my whole life. And then my uncle just came to me one day when I was walking around Kalama, and he was like, well, I'd love to sell the stuff you're making. And so I had this reason to start a brand and to actually create kind of my base. And so I went back home and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then I talked to my parents about it a little more, and we kind of decided that bikinis make sense because our family's always been so ocean rooted. And so starting from there, we kind of made a plan of what we would do, and we decided Makaha was going to be the theme because Makaha is such a special place to our ohana, and it's where we're from. And we decided to call it Makaha Fierce, which is the meaning of Makaha, which is actually funny because when you look up Makaha, it says fierce as in the people of Ka'u, and Ka'u is where my mom is from. Wow. And so we thought that that was total ho'ailona, just a sign that it was meant to be.
So the video is actually longer, but that's all I'm going to share for now. And that kind of just talked about my business. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
It got a little softer. Is there a way to make it louder?
Can you guys hear me now? No?
I can hear you. It's just a little soft. I see some
Speak louder.
maybe closer to the speaker.
Yeah, I can move closer. So that was my talk story with McKenna Maduli. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. But she wanted to talk about my business on Hawaii. And my brand focuses on environmental awareness. So we try to make everything that we do as environmentally friendly as we can.
Mahalo nui. We have so many follow-up questions about you and your career, and I cannot even imagine me at 12 if I was to start a business. That is amazing. So we will follow up with the questions later on in the webinar. And we'll go to Puamakamae. Would you like to share about your business and about your career and your video?
Aloha o Puamakamae kui ka hano hawe o mana le ka e hoi di sora ko uinoa. No kia au o ahu mai au. Umikumālima o Makahiki. Aloha, my name is Puamakamae Di Soto. I am 15 years old from Kia'au, Oahu, and my business, I have a couple. My first one is Puating Teas, which originally started as a fundraiser. I was going to Tahiti for one of my surf competitions, and so I decided to make a shirt to sell and fundraise and share with my Makaha ohana. And on the shirts it said Makaha Fierce and Makaha Surf Club. And so so then I ended up selling out about 200 of them in 10 hours. And that really opened my eye to the business of it all. And so that's really what motivated me. And then my other business is surfing. I'm a professional surfer as well. And so Just been trying to find creative ways to work in this industry and also bring the Hawaiian culture a lot more into it. And yeah, I'll share my screen now. This is a video from a couple years ago, so I'm a lot younger in it, but I'll still show it. Can you guys see it? Yeah.
O ko'u aloha ia'oe, he mea pauoe. My love for you is endless. I see the danger you possess. I ride the power you hold. I feel your presence, indulging me in the story. In the silence, you speak unknown words, but those I know too well. Even in my slumber, my dreams dive deep into your wild blue soul. I am lost without your touch against my skin, the sensation of ohana running through my veins. The flow of your dance is not one to tame, but one to follow, to honor, and to love. You're my first home, one that's always open. Ku'uhome na awo, ahe kanaka I mi keo. Mana o a ole au I mia nei kahie. Thought I'll never find anywhere else. Feel love together. Could we come closer? It's alright, 'cause there's not much time left to spare.
Yeah, so
That was amazing.
thank you.
So great.
I actually filmed majority of that in Tahiti in the trip that I fundraised for.
In Tahiti. I read a little bit about you in a different article, and it said that, or you shared that you write poetry. What you're saying in the video, was that a poem that you wrote yourself?
It's a piece that me and the director producer worked on together. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that video. And a lot of the our audience has been sharing that they also love both of the videos. Mahalo nui for sharing. Okay.
You know, you said that surfing is one of your businesses too, and we know about the surfing part, but how do you grow that as a business? What are the business aspects of surfing?
I think that really in surfing, a lot of it is business. You know, you work with other businesses, and our tour is also a business, and so really working on bringing. Well, what I work on is, you know, trying to integrate our culture a lot more into it, because in the World Surf League, which is what it's called, or the WSL, there's not much that is actually cultured, and surfing has started here in Hawaii, and a lot of people don't know that, and they also don't understand that, you know, it was so significant to us Hawaiians. And so I think the business side of it for me is really just sharing it with others and sharing a lot more about our culture. And then there's also some other aspects of working with other people and businesses. Yeah.
You can see even when she talks about it, it's very mission driven.
Yes.
Kind of
yes.
how we think, but I think maybe what Anake was asking was the more like technical things. So things that Pua has to do is read contracts. She has to have business meetings with sponsors and potential sponsors. She has to do reporting on her performances and her appearances. She has to manage her social media and her digital persona. Um, and also she has to have results in athletics as well. So those are some of the kind of the business sides of surfing.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And yet she really did focus on the mission, and I love that. Great. So, Kea Nuenue, I learned earlier that you might be the only person who sews in your family. Is that true? How did that come about? And now you're a fashion designer, but how did you get into sewing and designing clothing?
I've always loved to create. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. But I've always loved to create, and ever since I was little. And then when I was 3, I decided that I wanted to learn how to sew after watching my grandma sew for all of these years for our family, and just making little things, quilts, and I asked her, well, I asked my parents first, and they really didn't know how to sew at all. So they directed me to my grandma, and she was so happy that I wanted to learn. And she taught me like all of the basics and how to make pillowcases, how to stitch straight, how to thread a needle. And then once I started sewing with her, I fell in love with it. And so I started sewing more often, and that kind of became my way of creating. And my mom got me sewing classes. She won a bid for one and gifted it to me. And then I met my new sewing teacher, who became my sewing teacher for many years after that, and taught me everything else that I know about sewing, and taught me all the ins and outs of all the different machines, and just all of the background stuff that I needed to know to sew bikinis. And when I was about 10, I think I started to fall in love with designing a little more, because before that I would just sew whatever came to my mind and just kind of like put it straight through the machine, and then that was it. But when I was 10, I started to enjoy the process of thinking about what I'm creating and drawing it out, and just more of the technical side, I guess. And I started to draw my designs out, and even draw out designs that I've never sewn. But I really started to enjoy designing. And so everywhere I went, I took my drawing book with me, and I have designs that are inspired by different places we've been to or experiences I've had. But yeah, that's kind of just my little journey.
I heard you say you started at 3 years old. That's amazing.
I bet your sewing teacher is almost as proud of you as your parents are.
Yeah, she's so sweet. My auntie Uakea actually is who it is. And she actually, when I had my first class with her, she was only teaching adults. And so she was just a sewing instructor who taught classes to adults. And then I was her first kid student. And then after working with me for a few months, she actually decided that she wanted to teach kids instead. And so she switched her whole business around and started doing kids classes. And it was so cool to watch her go through that and to grow with me. And so it was a really cool experience.
Nice.
I think one thing, Napua, too, if I can add to that, because you mentioned her age, is that lots of times children show us their interests and what they're interested in, and then they go to school, and then everything becomes kind of standardized and whatnot. So if you have the opportunity to really be curious with them about what they're interested in and give them the tools that they're asking, that's something that I think is very Kanaka as well, is that, makahana ka ike, that we might not have this knowledge, but We just put the tools in her hand, and we started off with a Barbie sewing machine that she outgrew in a month, which it was really a toy. And then, you know, in a matter of years, she had graduated herself through all of the different machines. So, and I hear this a lot too, when I do business coaching, is people have all these ideas, and I'm an idea person too. I know I have ideas too, but sometimes I have to challenge them with, so what are you going to do about that? Like, what is it doing in your head? You know, how many years has it been in your head? And they're like, oh, I've been thinking about it for 5 years. I'm like, well, what's it going to do there? You know, get something on paper, makahana ka'ike, just put it out there, do it. Sometimes I think when people start businesses, they're under the impression that they have to have everything organized and set and understand every aspect of it. And that's really not the truth, right? Business is about failing and failing fast. So it's about getting out there and doing an initial thing, and then you learn and learn and refine and learn. And it reminds me kind of a voyage, if you will. Like, you set your course, but you're always going to be recalibrating your course as you go. And those are the best, you know, business mentors that I have practice that a lot in their business practices.
Mahalo to adding to that. I remember learning lessons about how kupuna were the ones to, you know, kilo, to observe keiki and to observe those in the kauhale to see where their passion or their i'ini is going towards, what their interest is. And so to hear that you do that as a makua is inspiring and interesting. I have a 9-year-old who seems like she changes her passion every other week. And so having to really dive in there with her is what I'm hearing would be helpful to grow that passion. And so I see some people are asking in the chat more about business coaching. I think for adults and also for keiki, if you wanted to share more about that.
I mean, I think the main thing for all entrepreneurs is to find mentors and sponsors. And like Kianunoi mentioned it, like I had no idea what fashion was and what the fashion industry was. I wore hand-me-downs my entire life, and I was stoked on them, you know, when I got a new bag of hand-me-downs. So she really had to go out and find some mentors. So she was super blessed, you know, at a young age, at 12, to Honolulu launched their first fashion week, Honolulu Fashion Week, and she went and she got dressed up and she did herself up, she styled herself, and she went and she met people. And I didn't even have a ticket to go. She was invited by one of her other aunties that knows that she loves fashion. And she went and she came back with pictures with Kini, with Ari South, with kind of all of these up and coming Hawaiian designers. And then she followed up, you know, she tagged them, and then they, you know, reposted her picture, and then she followed up. And like one of them, for example, Kini, has been so generous to Kianunoi with his time, his studio, all of his ike, is just an incredible mentor for her. And you know, invites her to participate in fashion shows. I mean, one thing she got to do, which I think is just amazing, is she got to show at the Palace, at Iolani Palace, at Haleali'io Iolani. And that was just like an amazing, you know, it was near the Queen's birthday. I had all the feels to it. And, you know, that was because she had an incredible mentor. So for everybody, right, you need to find mentors and sponsors. And the difference between mentors and sponsors is that mentors are going to really invest in you. They're going to spend time with you, helping you to think through things. And then sponsors are people that, you know, they're just going to open doors, right? Like, so for Kianunoi, I was a sponsor. I wasn't a mentor. Like, I was like, okay, I don't know anything about it, but here's a sewing class, like, work it out. So even in my career, I have mentors and sponsors, like people I call if I'm going after a position or something that I think might be able to help me open doors or get me a meeting with somebody to talk to them. And then I have mentors that help me mentor. But I also do business coaching. So I see it that, you know, that's what people are asking about. So you guys can hit me up on the side. I am a certified coach as well, and I do that. But I do it anyway. So like if you know me, just call me and text me and we can just talk story. I mean, that's the best way.
Let's see, we wanted to also ask Puamakamae, as a 6-time national champion surfer, what motivates you and what are some of your future goals in your career and in your sport?
Yeah, so I won 4 this past year in 2020 and then 2 in 2019. And what really motivates me is, I would say, the ocean. You know, just having the connection, and the ocean is my church. So, you know, it motivates me to want to work harder and just love it. And even other peers that I compete against, it just motivates me to want to do it a lot more, and which really is the reason why I chose it as a career path instead of just doing it for fun, was to be able to have a connection to the ocean and peers, and just being able to, you know, do something that I love but on a bigger scale, and being able to improve myself the best I can through something that I love. And yeah, and that's really why I chose this, and really what motivates me. And also my mom and my dad and my siblings, they always motivate me. My dad is a world champion longboarder, so he always has motivated me to want to be the best surfer I can, and that's really cool. Some goals that I have in the near future, I would say, I want to be on the World Surf League, on the CT, the Championship Tour, which is something that I've been working towards since I was 11. And my biggest goal is to win an Olympic gold medal in surfing. And so that's really my biggest goal. And then I would love to get a couple world titles along the way as well. So, yeah.
I think, Napua, if I can just add one thing. It was interesting, you know, she mentioned her dad is also a surfer, but it's important for me to point out that because his career was surfing, he didn't want any of our children to surf. And because he felt like at the end of his career, it was kind of a very self-centered industry. He didn't really bring anything home to his family, his community. And he just felt like he wanted all of the children to love the ocean and know the ocean and have a relationship with the ocean. But he felt like the professional side of it was just something that wasn't right for our ohana. So Pua actually sat him down when she was 11. Well, she sat us both down. And she said, you know, you support Kia nuenue in sewing, you know, all this stuff. Are you really not going to support me in surfing? And it was like a reckoning moment for us as ohana to think about, you know, how we wanted to show up for Pua in the things that she was passionate about too. But at the same time, one thing that we haven't done with both of the girls is we haven't sheltered them from the actual work of the business. So it's like, okay, you want to do this for a business? Okay, then you need to schedule your business meetings, open your accounts, figure out what a wire transfer is, get your LLC docs. Canada just filed her own taxes for the first time by herself, had to figure it out. So that's one other part of the growing in this, is that if you want it, you got to put the work in and get it done. And, you know, of course, now is the best time, I feel like, when they're young, because they have the safety net of the family. But I think sometimes entrepreneurs have great ideas and are well-intentioned, but then when it comes to the work, sometimes get stumbled up in that.
Sounds like you really have a great emotional intelligence that that you use in your child, in raising your family, really. I like that sense of maturity, that they can just talk to you in that way, and you know, and everybody can hear it out. What you've mentioned a couple of times now that sometimes, and you talked about the safety net in the family, try it now because there may be failures. And you've said that a couple of times now. So business, I suppose, is about failures. How do you deal with those failures and how do you grow from those?
So I actually love failing. I really lean into failing. I think it's a part of the journey that you have. And I'll just give you a little snippet, something that's super relevant. The last 6 months, I launched my doTERRA business, which is a multi-level marketing business. And people are like, what? You have all these successful businesses. And I'm like, I want to do this. It sounds interesting to me. It's an $80 billion industry. I want to know what it's about. And, you know, in multi-level marketing, you're going to hear no 9 times out of 10, right? And so it was a great way for me to like practice being an entrepreneur. And, you know, I tell people this that I coach with in that business is that everybody that told you no gave you some kind of gem to showing up in a different way on the next call or with the next person. So everybody that said no were very much just as much a part of my journey as everybody on my team, you know. So failure. So what we say in business is like fail fast. Like don't spend like 5 years building this great business plan. Forget the business plan, whatever. Like, yeah, you have to have some plans, but it doesn't have to be this like strat plan of the next 20 years. Like get something on paper and move through it, and you're going to fail. And the faster you fail, the stronger you'll be and the more successful you'll be. So try and learn, you know, take those lessons on early. And the girls have both failed. I mean, in surfing, you fail more than you win, right? For every, she could have had, you know, probably 50 national titles, but you lose more than you win. It's just how it is. And if you want to be the best, it comes back to things that we already know as kanaka, kulia ikanu'u. Like, okay, I didn't get it right, but what am I going to do now? I'm going to reassess, right? All of those like proverbs like are definitely cornerstones to the business too. You know, okay, I learned this and I tried to execute it. It didn't work. I got to relearn it, right? And that constant wanting to learn is also a business muscle that you build. Yeah, so I don't know. I love failing. It's like, tell me no. I can't wait.
That's inspiring because we've all failed a little bit, right? Failed at something. We've all had failures. So that's inspiring. Really take what we can and grow from it. Puamakamae and nuenue have younger sisters too, right? So how are you nurturing the younger ones? How do you pass on all of this good sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely driven by them, right? One thing that we're hyper conscious of is that we're not going to drive any of their buses, so to speak, right? So if they're interested in it, you know, then we'll definitely support them. But there's also a sacrifice, right, to wanting to do a business. And, you know, the girls and I have real honest conversations about that. Like you might not be hanging out with your friends every Saturday at the beach, Pua. You're actually going to be at the beach training while everybody's at the party. So, you know, but my youngest daughter, and she was going to join us, but her puna was sick. So she wanted to stay with her puna. But she just started, you know, showing an interest in money and, you know, wanting to be a business person too, but she didn't really understand how it works. And she's 7. And so she kept telling me I'm going to work at McDonald's so I can make money. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Which McDonald's? She's like, why not McDonald's? I was like, well, maybe you can own a McDonald's. And she's like, no, I don't want to pay people to work for me. I just want to make my money and have money. I said, oh, okay. So what you're really telling me is that you want a way to make money. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, why don't you recycle the cans at the house? And she's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And so, you know, instead of just having her like take out the cans, right, having her create a process for it. Like, so she has a composition book and she writes down in her composition book, you know, the days that she recycles the cans and how much she made. And then she has a client list. So she walks around the neighborhood and collects in her wagon bottles and cans. And then when they, you know, she asks them, she has a little pitch she put together. And when they want to, you know, if they want to be a client, then she comes by once a week and picks up their bottles and cans. And then she gets a gratification of, you know, having the kala too at the end. So it's something that, you know, she's learning to understand. She's getting to the place where she's like, can I hire someone? I'm like, no, so not for, but she's having all these curiosities, right? So that's the bottom line, is just to really, it's to really just nurture their curiosity. Like, you know, she was actually curious about money and she thought that McDonald's was the way to solve it, right? And then I just challenged her with maybe there's other ways, and then she was able to come up with something. But then also building the muscle at the same time, like, okay, here's a book. Now you're gonna write down everything. So she's practicing her handwriting, right? I mean, she's 7, so, and all the things, but she's thinking about it in a way that, in a mindset that is really kilo driven, I feel like. And that's why I think like Hawaiians are the perfect entrepreneurs, because we, if you just look at Hawaii as a place, the geographical diversity that we have is like no other place in the world. From the very bones of who we are, we're adaptive people. And we're people that really understand resource management. And that's entrepreneurship, really.
You're absolutely right. I completely agree. So I know that, and see, people are saying we could listen to you all night, and I absolutely agree. But also, if you folks have questions, if you can put them into the chat, or if you're on Facebook, if you put them into the comment section, and we'll get them transferred over here, because we've got the girls, and we have Malia, Puamakamae, and Kia Nuenue for a little while longer. And I think Napua are you back with your mic?
Yes. Hi.
Okay.
Just listening to all the sharing, I think I've heard already some gems of advice to community, to wahine, to aspiring entrepreneurs. But if you could choose maybe one piece of advice that you wanted to share to a budding wahine entrepreneur, a 3-year-old that wants to sew, or, you know, a 70-year-old who wants to learn social media, what kind of advice would you like to share?
Is that for me or the girls? Sorry, I missed the beginning.
I'm gonna pose the question to everybody. Maybe we can start with Kia Nuenue.
One of the things that I focused on, or that was a big part of my learning curve when I first started my business, was that a lot of people believe that you should be doing stuff based off of your age, which is something you kind of talked about with your examples. But for me, I was in 7th grade when I started my business. And so I was leaving school to do interviews, and I was leaving school to go work. And so people didn't always agree with what I was doing, or with the kuleana that I had to hold with my business. But I think my reasoning for starting my business was about so much more than just having a business. It's because I was really doing what I love. And so I think my message would just be that, you know, it doesn't matter how old or how young you are, or where you come from, or what you do, you can always do what you love, and you can always start something new, because like my mom said, the faster you fail, the more successful you'll be, and the stronger you'll be. And so I think that kind of just do what you want to do what you love, and don't let other people's restrictions hold you down.
Really sage advice.
Mm-hmm. Puamakamae, you have any mana'o? Any advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think that really what driven me was my passion for it. And I think that, you know, just do what you love, you know, and I guess, you know, for my little sister, if you want to work at McDonald's, if that's what you love, do it. But, you know, I think just being creative for sure, and think outside of the box, and not do what everybody else is doing, like working at McDonald's. You know, think outside the box. She's 7 years old, has her own can company. She loves it. And don't do what everybody else is doing. You know, create your own way as you go into it. Like my surfing, I don't really do surfing as I mean, it is a sport, but I don't like to do it as a sport. I like to do it as a cultural practice. And nobody else, yes, there's a couple other people who also, resonate with it as a cultural practice, but I think that's something that I really cherish and I always have been trying to, I guess, share with others. And it's something that put me aside from others sometimes. And, just do what you love and think outside the box and work your hardest to it.
That's great. So far, I've heard to be innovative, to be creative, and to follow your passion, your i'ini. Malia, did you have anything else to add?
Well, I don't know what the snapping thing is, but every snapping, I guess that's a applause. Okay. No, I mean, I think that's great advice. I would say that for those of you that know me, know I'm really big on magic. So, and you might not know why, but actually my dad, who was a pure Hawaiian fisherman from ʻAha Wahine Ku, he died with not a penny in his pocket, but he left me a gallon of Hawaiian salt that he harvested and that I cherish. And he left me with the phrase "make magic," and that was a phrase he used my entire life. Whenever he gave me something difficult, and he, suffered all of the curses, the colonial curses of our parents and grandparents. He was an alcoholic. I would visit him in Father's Day in prison. He had all the things going, but he left me these gems, right? And one of them was make magic. And he often would say that after he would tell me like some insurmountable task that he wanted me to do for somebody in our family. And it was just like, make magic. And so for me, I guess that's my advice, is make magic. And I kind of think about it like this, is that lots of people think about business logically, and logic is good. There's value in logic. I have a PhD, obviously I value logic, but one part logic, two parts magic. Like that's the formula. And if you try and make it all logic, you're gonna fail, like maybe fail for good. But if you allow for the universe and for your ancestors to show up, and you make space for that to happen, the magic will happen.
That's beautiful, Malia. That I don't know how we can ask anything better than that. Maybe we can ask, I've heard it was Pua who said earlier that the ocean is church, right? It's where you go to be inspired, to think, whatever, that's her church. Question to all three of you, and particularly Pua, if you want to add on a little bit, how do you get grounded? How do you take care of yourselves and really get grounded again?
Okay, I'll go first. I think for me to get grounded, I really just try to focus on the positive, but also just bringing myself back to who I am and remembering who I am, why I do what I do, and depending on the situation, why or how did I get into a situation like that. And yeah, so like the ocean is my church. I'm in there every day. It's just so free. There's so much area that you can just let everything out, and and so that's why I call it my church. A lot of people actually do call it their church too, that I've heard. But it's just a place that you can just be free and do and express yourself however way you want, whether it's longboarding, shortboarding, swimming, bodyboarding, bullyboarding, or just being at the beach and being present. It's amazing. And another thing that I do with the ocean to reground myself sometimes is hi'uwai, which we do with my ohana, and sometimes I just do it alone and just taking a breather and going in the water and letting it all out. and so I can come back and be happier.
I will say too that Pua is a huge mindfulness freak. So she does a lot of meditation too. And I think it's because she's so emotional. She's an emotional wahine, that she uses a lot of meditation in her kind of daily practice and in her athletic business as well.
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off, Mom, because I want to answer before you do. But I have two ways of staying grounded, and the first one is a little more conventional. I like to go sit out in the aina and just kind of feel the aina around me and the energy that it has, and kind of just reset. And the second way I like to get grounded, or get pounded really is what it is I like to go out on big days and I just send it on the biggest wave that I see. And most of the time I get pounded. And I think for me, that's kind of just where I hit my reset button. And it helps me to, I guess, like come back to being present, because really like when you're getting pounded, you just want air. And so it kind of just like calms down your mind and it calms down your body, because you got to relax. You got to take the lickings, and then once the wave passes, you can come back up. And then, yeah, that's just kind of how I reset.
Oh, wow. That's like rebooting all your senses. Thank
Yeah,
you.
literally.
And Ken and I just got a call today, right? Ken and I, about that. What was your call today?
Yeah, kind of about that. I was asked to, I guess, kind of help out and kind of just sit in at the Red Bull contest that they're for women. And so they asked me to come out on a ski and kind of just watch it all and to help out wherever I can and take it all in. But I'm very excited for that, because I get to experience other wahine doing what I love and just being like amazing beasts out in the water and taking these huge waves. So yeah.
Thank you. That's amazing.
To what Anu was saying with like big waves, I think like in Makaha especially, we have a big shore break. And like, I think something that my whole family does is we throw ourselves over the falls on purpose, and you land on the straight sand. And yeah, it hurts, but it's actually kind of fun. But I feel like that also like grounds us, and it reminds us to be present and just enjoy it.
For me,
Fearless. I'm sorry, Malia, go ahead.
No worries. Actually, that's a training technique that Dwayne's uncle Bruce used to do with him to train him for big waves. And his cousins, he used to, on big days, take them in the shore break and teach them how to go over the falls and how to land and how to take care of themselves. And so it's something that the kids still enjoy doing. And sometimes you'll see Uncle Bruce down there going over the falls with them in the shore break. So that's always awesome. I think, like the girls said, we're a huge ocean family. My husband, is a professional athlete, and myself coming from a fisher family. But then, there was definitely a gap in ike from my side of the family. Like it was never passed down to me, all of the things that I would have liked to learn. So for me, it's, in connecting with the ocean, it's learning more about myself and who I am, and reconnecting with my my dad and my kupuna, my ancestors, in that way. And the ocean is the one place my husband always reminds me, like, we have a nonprofit for keiki, and we do ocean education. And he always reminds me that the ocean is the one place that keiki have to be fully conscious with all of their senses. There's no distractions like TV, iPads, parents, siblings. Once they get in the ocean, they know like it's only the ocean. So it's one of the few quiet spaces left that we have. So going to the ocean is definitely one of our grounding places. I think that also remembering our kuleana and what our responsibility and obligations are because of the privilege that we have is really important to us, and doing community work and really trying to put ourselves out there in the sense of working with community to lift up our community, I think is another grounding work. And then the third thing for me is reflection. And that's an important life and business tool, is to always be reflecting. So, there's one app I use is called 5-Minute Journal, because time is something that I don't have. It's my most valuable resource these days. But the 5-Minute Journal is an app. You can also get the book, and it's just takes you 5 minutes at the end of the night, and it reminds you, like, about gratitude and about reflection, and really helps you kind of center yourself in space and time and get ready for another day.
Mahalo. I think I'm probably going to be one of many that's going to download that app tonight. Some questions from the chat real quick. I know we're nearing the hour, but we have someone from Facebook who has a question for nuenue. Where do you gain inspiration for your design, and are there any plans for more body inclusive suits or more body inclusivity in your designs?
I love this question because it's hard, but it's actually not that hard, I guess. But my inspiration is kind of just everything, experiences, places we go, things we do, like surfing, and our culture, of course. But my main inspiration is nature. Nature has always amazed me, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things in this world. And so I think celebrating nature is part of my design process. And so I would say that nature is my main inspiration. And yes, I do plan on making more body inclusive suits and designs in general. And I think that for me, that would be probably my next goal, is to broaden my sizing. And I hope to get that done this year, because I feel like that is one of the most important parts of fashion that is being ignored, is body inclusivity. But hopefully I get that done by this year.
Mai ka'i. Okay, last question. I think we'll ask Malia. I think many wahine are wondering how does business life and ohana life, balance out. I think when we talked last time, you kind of described to me like you're decolonizing business and decolonizing what most people think of what ohana should look like and what ohana should be like. So I would like to ask you, how do you include your ohana in your business, and how do you balance all of that out?
Yeah. So when I left the university, I retired all those words. I know I used colonize once today, that C word, but colonize, post-colonial, decolonial, those are all retired. And now today I just try and be present as a Hawaiian. And I really try and lean into my intuition and my na'au, because I have already the resources and the ike of what being a Hawaiian is, and what our values are as Kanaka. So really it's not a decolonial model, it's just a Kanaka model. And in this Kanaka model, we take our keiki with us wherever we go. If we're fishing, our keiki are with us fishing. If we're in the mountains gathering, our keiki are with us in the mountains gathering. If we're beating kapa, our keiki are with us. So it's no difference today. If I'm at a board meeting, my keiki are with me at the board meeting. If I'm at a different business pitch, my keiki you might find them sitting in the back of the room listening to my business pitch. Yeah, that it's really an integrated approach. And I think that's just me being a Hawaiian Wahine, that, you're all of the norms of like separation of the workforce and the family, those are all Western norms. Those aren't our norms. And so I think, to the extent possible, we have to constantly challenge those norms by just being Hawaiian and being ourselves and bringing our families. And, if a crying baby is too much for you to handle, then maybe I don't have time to talk to you, because there's a good chance that there might be a crying baby around, right? And so I think being upfront about that, and people will say, well, where I work, I can't do that. And I'll say that every business job interview I ever went into, I always, I don't want to say negotiated because it sounds so transactional, but I always was very upfront that my first priority in life was my family. and that was always going to be my priority. And if those values didn't match the values of the institution I was, potentially going to work for, then it probably wouldn't be a good fit. And because I designed that alliance up front, that my family was first, and these were the things, and I would, work really hard and get everything done. But the alliance was that there was a clear understanding of what was my priority. It always allowed for me to include my family in everything I do. And I think more on just like the Wahine side of how to balance it all, like all the things. People ask me this all the time, and I think that's the magic. In fact, when I have a day like today, I had back like 10 Zoom meetings. It was nuts and all these different things, and I was on the go. Like on days like these are like my, they have a special place in my life where I don't even try and work out the logistics of it. I'm just going to navigate through it as it goes, because at that point it's just way too much, that if the universe doesn't intervene, it's not going to happen. And so, but I think, things like that are things that we should consider as Wahine, is not being so, is being more flexible and adaptive with our schedules and our lives. So let me try and summarize. So definitely integration, definitely to be adaptive. Self-care is super important. And, people are going to say, well, when do you have time to do that? And I just say, make time, like really make time. If it's important to you, you'll make the time. And one other thing I'll say is, like, people always say like having it all, right? Like, what is having it all? What you have is all. So take care of what you have, and that's all your things. There is nothing more for you. But what you'll find is that as soon as you take care of what you have, the all keeps growing to be bigger and bigger. So I don't know, just some feedback, but definitely self-care. The most successful CEOs in the world travel once a quarter, because they have recognized that in order for them to produce and to work at the rate at which they want to work, that they need to actually completely unplug. And that's where their most creative ideas come from. So we need to practice some of that, like just in our regular lives as well.
I absolutely agree. Malia, you're an inspiration, and you've introduced us to two of your inspiring children. And I know you have more children, and we're just all, as at this Aha Wahine gathering, we're so grateful that you shared with us Puamakamae and nuenue. And we wish we could spend more time with you. Truly, we do. I think some of the big takeaways are that you are committed to doing things in a Kanaka way. And whether it's business or just your day-to-day business or raising your family, that you're doing it as a Kanaka. And I really appreciate how you've described your family's reboot. I think we all do, because there's so many good comments coming in. And I'm struck by the emotional intelligence that your daughters have. And I think that is simply because that's the way you and your husband, behave with your children. So that's absolutely amazing. There are so many takeaways besides the app, which we are all going to check in with. So mahalo kia nuenue. Mahalo Puamakamae, mahalo to Mama Malia, Dr. Malia Ka'aihue. We're grateful for your time today. And mahalo to all the listeners today for spending another episode of Aha Wahine Ku Hinapapa. If you have any questions or if you want to follow up, Malia has invited you to ping her, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of that. And maybe we should have another session with her as well. So to the Kaihui and DeSoto family, mahalo nui, malama pono. We're grateful for the time that you spent with us. On behalf of Aha Wahine Ku Hinapapa, we want to mahalo all of our sponsors. And this is, we want to mahalo Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, Hawaii People's Fund, Papa'ola Lokahi, the Native Hawaiian Education Association, and OEV Television for enabling us to present this series to you, Aha Wahine Ku Hinapapa. We're going to continue this. If you have any special ideas, just email us with if you want some, there you go. There's our website. Just email us and give us some ideas of what you'd like to hear. More Wahine topics, more Wahine to feature, and we'll see what we can do about that. Mahalo, ahuiho, aloha, and malama pono. Take care of one another. Be safe. Napua, any final words?
No, I think you wrapped up beautifully. Mahalo nui. And we will see you folks hopefully on February 25th, which is our next webinar. We will share on our social medias who will be featured, who will be presenting that evening. And it will definitely be in celebration of Olelo Hawaii. E ola mau ka Olelo Hawaii, mahalo nui. Ahuiho.
Aloha. Aloha.
Aloha, ahuiho.
Ahuiho.
Aloha. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo ya oko.